Good evening. Welcome to Town Administrator's Report. I'm David Watts Jr., and with me is our Town Administrator Steve Maio. Steve, welcome.
Thank you. Nice spring-like day today, the day after Valentine's Day.
It is.
Forcing spring in with yellow tie and
Been a
everything.
weird winter.
Has been, but that's okay. I am very happy with not having a lot of snow money to spend this year. So
No,
let's hope that I didn't just jinx it.
We have had rain, though.
We have had rain.
So it isn't a
Yeah.
dry winter like
Yep.
last year.
Yeah.
But we're going to recap a little bit. Last month, we were talking about the then upcoming special town meeting for the new high school, which Article 1, the only article, was approved 1,231 to 42.
Yep.
Much more lopsided than I thought it would be.
Yeah, I think that traditionally at town meeting votes for particularly school projects, the yes people really come out, knowing that that there is another bite at the apple. There's a two-pronged approach, has to pass town meeting by 2/3, and I think it was 97%, and then it needs to go to the ballot, and that's just a simple majority. I thought it was a very well-run town meeting. I have to thank WCAT for all the work they did. I know that's not an easy meeting to set up,
No.
particularly where we really have no other place to put that meeting other than the high school field house. And I say that because when you are going out and you're borrowing money via a bond, okay, so the actual vote at that meeting and the actual setup of that meeting is something that is considered by bond counsel.
Right.
When they approve the whole note. And when you're borrowing, more than $200 million, I think you don't want it to be, well, we had 100 people over here, we had 100 people down the hall, we had another 300 down here, which is, some people said you should have had it at the Galvin. Galvin is a much better venue for our traditional annual and regular town meeting, and perhaps even special town meetings that aren't going to draw what we thought
Right.
was going to be a large crowd. Now, we had seats for 2,000 people in that. So we did have plenty of seats. I think, unfortunately, a lot of people that came in just wanted to stand
Right.
in around, and that was fine. It worked out fine. But there was seating available for 2,000 seats, and no one wanted to be in front of the class, I guess, in case they got called on. I blame that on the moderator. Some of us are much nicer than he is. But I thought it was very well done. Moderator, our town clerk, Betsy Sharon, they need to get a lot of credit. That's not an easy meeting to pull off.
No, and this one was especially difficult because of the crowds. There were also crowds of voters up on the second level
Right.
overlooking the field house. And, I think we also have to give credit to the counters.
Yes,
Who,
absolutely.
who had 2 votes they had to count that day, one to move the question, and then the final vote on the article itself.
Yeah, and I think another group that does need to be given some kudos is the Boys and Girls Club, which had, I forget the number, did I hear 140 plus kids that they were, kind of watching while their parents were in voting.
Right.
I think it was that number. I'm way beyond that now, so I didn't pay that much attention.
Which is also a great service so that
Yeah.
parents can attend
Can
town
attend,
meeting.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I think that was valuable too.
And town meeting is an interesting form of government. A lot of people asked me coming into the town meeting and before the town meeting, Steve, town meeting starts at 9:00. What time will we be voting? And the answer is when people want to. I mean, when they're done talking. People, what do you mean? Is it going to be 9:30? Is it going to be 10? Is it going to be 10:30? I said, I really can't tell you that.
Right.
The whole premise behind town meeting is that there is a debate, and when that debate is over, or someone moves to have the debate over,
Which is what happened.
that is when the actual vote occurs.
Right.
So, I mean, there was, 2+ hours, I would say, roughly, or 2 hours or so of, presentation and some commentary. And I think, after a little bit, not a lot of new information
Right.
coming up. Gentleman did make the motion to move the question, and for kind of strange wording, but that's, parliamentary procedure in there. And, that needs to be for a 2/3 vote. So when you think about it, town meeting, to end debate
Right.
and to actually vote on the question, you have to, two out of three people that come into that meeting need to approve of that. And that's not an easy thing to get. That's a high threshold, and it probably should be. So, that happened, and then the question occurred. Again, there were a lot of people that hadn't been to town meeting, and I said to the moderator, I said, listen, you need to tell everybody that moving the question is not the same thing as the vote on the question.
Right. Right.
So he, luckily he did make that, he made that announcement, and
Well, there was a
went through
gentleman
that.
sitting next to me who had moved to Wakefield from South Boston.
okay.
Town meeting was a completely new concept, and yet, I think he came to appreciate the fact that there is direct government, direct input in a town like Wakefield that you can't have in a city environment.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It was been, and I do have to give real kudos to, again, to our town clerk and our town moderator, WCAT, of course, Bill Renault, our accessibility coordinator. When we had, TVs, monitors up. Now, it wasn't perfect, and the acoustics in there aren't great in that venue, but
it's a sports hall.
It's a sports hall. But, given the circumstances and given the fact that we don't have another venue other than maybe Landrigan Field.
Right.
And we'll have to think about that someday if there's really going to be, there's going to be 5,000 people, we're going to have to think about that as an outdoor venue.
And rain dates.
And rain dates, but all things considered, I think that the crew and of course my DPW guys,
Right.
they and the school personnel did a great job in
Well,
making that as comfortable as possible.
The other hiccup, and the meeting was delayed almost an hour just to get people in.
Yeah.
And maybe that also in the future for a meeting like this needs to be looked
Yeah.
at, multiple check-in
Yeah,
desks.
we have talked about that, and I think that it's very difficult to have any check-in procedure if, we have 500 people
Right.
arriving at the same time, which is essentially what happened. I mean, I will tell you at 8:45, I went outside to get a little fresh air, and I was kind of looking. There's not a huge number of people here at
Right.
this point, and there was nobody there
Right.
in line. At 10 minutes of 9, it was around the building. So it was in that 5-minute span that people came. It was
And
really
running up
interesting.
Hemlock Road.
And running up Hemlock Road. So, our town clerk was out there actually checking people in and trying to move them around. And, we had to, eventually start the meeting. But I will say this, despite that, when we were taking both votes,
Yes.
I looked over there. There was no one waiting to check in. There was no one in line. If you wanted to be there and vote, you were there.
Yeah.
So I think that at the end of the day, democracy prevailed. Someday we can do a show on whether it should be open town meeting or representative town meeting, and that'll be a spirited debate between us. We've already had a few.
We've discussed it
Maybe
several
we'll invite
times over
the
years.
moderator who's on your side of the fence on that one. So maybe we'll.
Well, he
maybe
wants to
we'll-
keep his job.
Well, that's true. But we still need a moderator for that anyway. But
True,
representative.
true.
But no, I think I commend all those involved, and the next process is the election.
So the next step that's required by the school building administration, the
Right.
Mass School Building Administration,
And by Proposition 2.5, that's the procedure by.
is a special election, and that has now been scheduled.
That has been scheduled for March 11th. That is a Saturday, and that'll be at the normal polling place, which is at the Galvin Middle School. Saturday, so there won't be any school in session, so people can maybe park. And and the polls will be open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., just like a normal election.
Yeah.
And unlike unlike town meeting, you can come anytime during that time period. You will vote when you get there, and that's all you will do. We'll vote on one question. There's no debate. There's no, other than checking in when you normally vote. You put your ballot, you fill it out, yes or no. You go and put it in the machine, and then you're done for the day. So probably for 10, 15 minutes out of your time, you'll be able to participate in that.
Sure.
The ballots are all printed. The ballots are available if that is a bad day for you. And I know that people go away, they go skiing or family trips and things like that. The ballots are available. You can get an absentee ballot from the town clerk's office. We do not question anybody's reasoning for not being available that day. So please come down and you can do that right now and do it and vote, or do it and request it. They'll send it by mail, whatever's easier for you. So that's about 4 weeks.
Right.
So there's a long time for people to be able to.
And plus, there'll be a drop-off box in front of Town Hall.
On those
next to-
absentee, yeah.
In the row of
Right.
boxes that are there permanently.
Exactly. You can return those absentee ballots at Town Hall or mail it in. I always say if you can, return it because we don't control the mail. But if you return it, you know that you dropped it in that locked box. So.
Right, right.
Or you can come in and bring it into the clerk's office too, if you feel better.
So just to recap, if this vote is successful, that will mean that the project goes ahead.
Yes.
And the school building administration will be reimbursing the town at the rate of $393 per square foot.
Correct.
So, which is the new rate that was voted the same day as Wakefield being accepted.
Right. Before we went in, it was $360, so we did get a little bit of an increase there.
Right.
I will say that there is legislation that's been filed to increase the funding for the SBA, and which could increase the ceiling of where the square footage is for reimbursement, which could increase the money we get from the state, which would lessen the amount that the town would have to pay. A lot of ifs in there.
Right.
A lot of ifs.
Well, it would have to be retroactive for one thing.
Yes. Well, one thing is, and in fact, we were both at a breakfast today that had our delegation, state delegation, and others at the chamber. I'd like to say the Greater Wakefield Chamber sponsored it. It really is the Wakefield Linfield Chamber, but I call it the
Right.
Greater Wakefield Chamber.
But we also had Reading and a couple
Right.
of
So a
others
couple of
there.
other
Yeah,
other
yeah.
chambers came and
Yep,
joined
yep.
them, and there is mention of that. And as I mentioned at the meeting, I would ask that they do make it retroactive, particularly for the schools that came in during this bubble,
Yeah.
during this great escalation, I should say, so that would certainly be very helpful to us. The next step that we will do is if and when we pass the town vote, we will then sign what's called a project funding agreement with the SBA. I have, as I mentioned at the meeting, when we sign that, I'm going to ask that there's language in there in case that happens, or in the event that we get any other grants. Who knows? There could be a federal grant. I don't know.
Right.
I don't want to preclude us from utilizing that to buy down our cost in the town of Wakefield, not the SBA involvement.
Right.
Their involvement should only go up. Ours, I'm hopeful, will only go down. So that's a very one-sided part of the contract.
Well, and part of the problem is we've seen building costs themselves in the last year and a half, almost 2 years, double.
Double, and probably more, in some cases triple. And I think you can see it when if you go to local lumber yard or local hardware store to buy 2x4s. That has skyrocketed in price. And you can think about how many of those are steel. Steel jumped really high. That has since come down a little bit. So that's good, but we don't know
Right.
what's going to happen. And it really was a huge escalation when I go back to the days of the Galvin School. The Galvin School cost did escalate during when there were some delays there too, but not like we're seeing now.
Right.
So like I said at town meeting, like Joe Bertrand on the Permanent Building Committee said at town meeting, is that we have worked in escalation into our estimates. And we had 3 peer reviewers estimate the cost of the school as well. So I'm hopeful that we actually will use less town money than we are authorized to, which would be great, which also will bring down our costs. So we're looking at all those things, but we did want to make sure that, we underpromised and overdelivered.
Right.
And, now it will be on us, should this pass on March 11th, to go forward and make those words true.
And I think one of the other things that helped people make the decision was the way that borrowing the money for the project was also staggered through the course of the project instead of just taking out one lump sum now.
Yeah, I mean, for a couple of reasons. Number one, I think that the prevailing thought nationally and with some very talented people on our finance committee that we've spoken to, prevailing thought is that we're going to go through a period of rising interest rates. The Fed is raising it, but that will ease, and then things will come down, and hopefully long-term will come down on that. That's what we seem to think, some of the so-called experts seem to think. But we did do an analysis at a higher rate and presented that. That's why we presented a range. The other thing is that we're borrowing $213 million, or thereabouts, 208, I guess. 213 was the old number. There is no way that we will spend $208 million in the first year on the project. So why borrow money and pay interest on it that we're not going to use? Why borrow money and pay interest on it at probably a higher rate than we would get should we put it in the bank? Okay, what's the offset? It's not that good. And, and really you're not supposed to do that with municipal financing, according to the Department of Revenue. If interest rates were at 1% right now, or 2%, I'd say, let's borrow everything we can. In fact, one of the finance committee members said to me, Steve, I told you when we were doing the Galvin, you should go out and borrow another $200 million at this. And I said, yeah, that would have been great. I didn't have a project to link it to. And really, we can't do that. And he says, you have too many rules in financing. I said, well, that's the way it works. So why would I do that? So that will stagger in the payments, because, of course, you're not going to pay for money that you don't borrow.
Right.
And it also will, the factor that, and I'm not so sure I explained this very well at town meeting, so this gives me another shot. The mortgage payment at the end of the day is going to be the mortgage payment. So if you have a 30-year mortgage on your house and your principal and interest payment is $1,000 a month, okay, it's going to be $1,000 a month, whether your income is $3,000 a month as the person paying it, or you get raises and it's $4,000 a month. So, you're going to certainly be better. If you get raises, it's less of a percentage of your income.
Sure.
So if you think of this as our bond payment is $1,000 a month at, when it all is borrowed down. And we're spreading that $1,000 a month over a tax levy base of, let's say, $100 million. Okay. That's our payment. Okay. Year 2. Okay. We get some new growth and things like that. Now we're spreading that $1,000 a month over a base of $102 million. So incrementally, your percentage as part of that is going to come down a little bit. So that's very hard to project. So I can't say, well, geez, you're, in 20 years, should you still have your same home? Your payment is going to drop from, the beginning might be $1,000 a year to $800. I don't know.
Sure.
Because I don't know what's going to happen. Some people will say, well, yeah, but my house will be worth more money, so my cost is going to go up. No, that payment on that bond is over the entire tax levy. So that's an add-on. It's not going to be necessarily linked to the fact that your house was $700,000 in 2025, and in 2030 it's $800,000 value. The percentage is going to come down a little bit for you. So very hard concept to understand, and I get it. I think one woman asked, why aren't you showing every year up there? That would have been a little bit busy, we thought, in looking at it, so we kind of showed, staggered, but all those years in between, because there's a lot of numbers to look at on the page. So.
Well, and I think that would have overwhelmed a lot of
Yeah,
people in
I
the
know.
hall.
It overwhelms me.
you know.
So, and I've looked at them many times.
So, so once we get past that, we then have annual town meeting
Yes,
coming up. Okay,
and that'll be Monday night. Sorry, David. Starting Monday night, May 15th. I think that part of the decision to go to a potential Monday, Thursday format is that there will have been a few Saturday dates already since the beginning of the year. We do find that, particularly in the spring, there are dance recitals on Saturday, there are first communions, there are confirmations, there are things like that.
Right.
Good weather, hopefully, that people want to go to, and that makes it a little bit more, less inviting for some people to go to a town meeting. So we're going back to the Monday night, May 15th, at the Galvin. So we'll be back to 200 or 300 people. Plenty of room.
if that.
If that, plenty of room. And I don't see anything overly exciting on that agenda at this point. The warrant is open, so
Right.
people can put articles in. It's open through April 7th, so I really don't know what's
Well,
going to
we'll
happen.
be talking about, the articles as they're
Right.
coming up over the next two programs. But yes, May 15th, put it down on your
May
calendar.
15th, yeah, Monday night, 7 p.m., the gavel will fall down.
Yep. And do we have any news on the cherry sheet this year yet?
Sadly, no. Sadly, I
This is the same thing every year.
Right.
We start this and it's like, haven't heard.
haven't heard yet. Yeah, normally, well, whenever a new administration comes in, the new administration in their first year is given until March 1st
Okay.
to release their budget. That budget, which is released by the governor, is called the House One budget. So the House One budget should be released on March 1st of this year. Would love it to be next week. Would love it to be. I'd love that I got buzzed today, right now, and I got it, but I don't think that's the case. In subsequent years, so it's not the first year of an administration, we usually get the cherry sheet, towards the middle or end of January. So it does hurt a little bit with planning in our form of government. I think our financing and forecasting team have a pretty good track record in kind of figuring things out. I will tell you, we are hoping to get the fully funding under the Student Opportunities Act in
Right.
Chapter 70. That will help. I'm hoping that unrestricted local aid comes in at a good level, and I'm hoping that charter school reimbursement also comes in at a good level. Those are the three biggies on your cherry sheet, and we get between 10 and 12% of our revenue back from the state, which is I kind of go back and forth. I'd like it to be higher, of course. I said at that breakfast we were today that I'd love a 10% increase in there, but I'd settle for 8 from them. We'll see what happens. But if we were like some communities that receive, think of your cities receive, 20, 25% of their
Right.
income on the state cherry sheet, which is great because you're getting that. But that's a lot more nervousness right now because you don't know. So I'm hopeful that will be good and okay. I'm hopeful that new growth will be good. And one thing we do know is that receipts are coming in very well. There's a lot of building going around. People are going out to restaurants. So we're getting local option meals tax. Hotel taxes are coming in higher than they were during the pandemic, and really
We're
back to
seeing people travel again.
really
Yeah.
back to pre-pandemic levels and above.
Yeah.
So, those things are positive. So we'll hold on to those positive thoughts while bite off my nails over the next 2 weeks.
And yet it was interesting because one of the discussions at the Chamber of Commerce legislative breakfast this morning was the difficulty some businesses are having in getting replacement employees hired for those who retired during COVID or for some other reason didn't come back.
Yeah, that's it's not just the private businesses and what have you. It's hiring in across the board, including municipalities like Wakefield. And I'll tell you as an example, Wakefield's a civil service town, which means that people would go and take the civil service exam to be on the police and or fire department. And,
Right.
We'll call for a list, we'll call for a test. It used to be years ago that for the police test, for instance, we might have 100 people sign up to take the test. Now we're getting 20 or 25 that are even taking it. Of that 20 or 25, only a handful will come in and actually sign, yes, I took the test, and yes, I want to be a police officer. So maybe out of 25 that took the test, maybe a third of them will sign and they want to go. So we're down to 7 or 8 or 9.
Right.
people
Competing for how many
competing
openings
for-
on average?
Well, there could be 2 openings, right?
Yeah.
And then when you drill down even further, in many cases, they're probably not employees we want. It's particularly in that, in something as sensitive as police officer. So that's, recruitment is a problem. And that is across the board in all divisions. So that's something that, town council and I are kind of struggling with. How do we put ourselves
Right.
more attractive
Right.
to receive, to have new employees? At the same time, retain the ones that we have here, because we have some very, very talented, dedicated, completely caring individuals here in town. And so that's a balance we have to juggle and make sure that we're, fiscally prudent when we do it. So, but that's probably a story for another day.
That could be a show in and of itself. Yeah, but a lot going on. But just to recap, we have the special election on Saturday, March 11th, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., and it will be in the gym at the Galvin.
Yes. Jim
Yes,
Calvin,
where it's been,
yep, for a while.
Yep.
And I know there's nothing special about this election other than it is, an off-cycle election, and it is one ballot question. The procedure is absolutely the same. You'll come in, you'll check in, you'll get your ballot, you'll fill in the oval, yes or no, one question. You'll turn it in, and there's no real, there's no reason why you can't vote. It's not going to be a discussion. It's not going to be a long issue. It's just
Right.
a normal election.
and then go off and enjoy your
Go
Saturday.
and enjoy your Saturday. Exactly.
And then annual town meeting will begin Monday, May 15th at 7 p.m.
Yes. Yep.
And that will go Monday and Thursday until all the articles are done.
Yeah. And hopefully we'll 1 or 2 nights. But we'll have that bet later on when we see what we have. We don't know.
No, we don't. But we will pick that up on the next show. Will be the first of 2 shows talking about annual town meeting, and hopefully we'll be able to fill that in the meantime.
And I hope to have some budget information for you by then too.
There you go. That's it. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
We'll see you next month.
Great. Have a great day.